Hi, I'm Stu from HiveMind Automation and welcome back to the Hive. In this video, we're going to be learning how to set up a Home Assistant server in a virtual machine on an Unraid server. So while I roll the intro, why don't you take a moment to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you get notified when I release new videos each week. While you're at it, if you like what I do here and you want to support the channel, there's some affiliate links in the video description to smart home gadgets that you can buy for your own smart home and support the channel at the same time, or you can support the channel directly through my Buy Me a Coffee link. Of course, those affiliate links and my Buy Me a Coffee link should be available on my website, hivemindautomation.com.au. With all of that out of the way, let's get started. So a while ago, I did a video on recovering from disaster where I set up my new, fresh, clean production installation of Home Assistant to mount SMB shares to handle database backups for Home Assistant. And I ended up pushing those backups to the SMB shares on my Unraid server. I got a comment on that video at the time asking why I wasn't just running Home Assistant directly on the Unraid server, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Now, firstly, until recently, my Unraid server was underpowered and overworked for the workload that I was already throwing at it, which also meant that it was starting to become unreliable. I've since fixed all of those issues, and I'll be doing a video on how I went about that when I get an opportunity. But secondly, the generally recommended way to run Home Assistant on Unraid is to make use of Docker, as there's already a Docker image ready to go in the community app store from Unraid. But that introduces a couple of issues. When you run the Docker version of Home Assistant, you lose the Supervisor functionality, which handles things like updates and also the add-on store. When you run a Raspberry Pi image, you get all of that. As I say, the Supervisor handles the add-on Docker containers and the Home Assistant core updates. So the add-on store functionality and the update functions, at least in my mind, are more than enough for me to consider virtualization a better option. Now, at the time of the previously mentioned video, virtualization wasn't an option as well because of the existing load on the server. If I were to spin up a virtual machine, it would just perform extremely poorly. Now, with the load issues resolved, virtualization is back on the table. Now, if you're going to be following along at home for prerequisites, you're going to need an Unraid server, and you're going to need to have VMs enabled on the Unraid server as well. So here we are on the dashboard of my Unraid server. And if I go into settings and we'll look at the VM manager, and we need this VMs set to yes. If you don't already have that set, you'll need to change that and then apply that, and you'll end up with this VMs item show up in your menu system here. Now, what I'm also going to do here, just for simplicity, is I'm going to go to my shares section here, and I've also got the domains share, which this is where our virtual machine details get stored. If I scroll through here, I've turned SMB security settings to export. I've set the export to yes, and the security to public. Public security is probably not ideal here, but at least we can then mount this domains share from our Unraid server on our local computer, because we're going to need to copy some files to this location. The last prerequisite that we're going to need to meet, we're going to need an image to install onto our virtual machine. So if I go to github.com/home-assistant and I want this operating system repository here, I'll put links to this in the video description. I'm going to go over to releases here, and I'm going to click on this Home Assistant OS 12 latest here. And it was released 2 weeks ago at the time of recording. If I click on this and we scroll down to this assets section, it's worth mentioning that this assets section may not be fully exposed, so you might need to click the exposure triangle there, and we're going to scroll through here and I'm looking for this image here, this HAOS underscore OVA dash 12.0 QCOW2.xz. And I'll click that, and that's going to start downloading it. Now I've already downloaded this file, so I will minimize this window. Once the file's finished downloading, you'll have this HAOS underscore OVA dash 12.0 QCOW2.xz file. And at least on a Mac, you can just double click this and it will extract the zip file. It's 404.8 megabytes when it is inside the XZ file. That's an XZip, and it comes out to 940.4 megabytes when it is extracted. So just be aware that it is not a small file. So now we've got the QCOW2 file without the .xz. This QCOW2 file is our disk image, so we're going to need to copy this over to our domains folder on our server. Now, I've got my domains folder here, and you'll see that I've already got those two files, the XZ file and the QCOW2 file, are showing up there in, I created this folder HAOS underscore base. And there's a reason I've done that. So when we end up creating our virtual machine, this QCOW2 file is the disk image that it is booting off, and any changes we make are going to affect this QCOW2 file. So what I actually want to do here is be a little bit smart about how I use this. So over in my terminal here, I'm just going to SSH as a root into my server. And I have SSH keys installed on my server, so I just go straight through. I'll just clear that. I'm going to cd2/mount/user/domains, and we're just running ls/lah, and we see that we've got HAOS base and Windows 10 in there, which is exactly what we have when we look at that. The DS store stuff is stuff that Mac OS puts on there, which I probably need to sort out so that it's not leaving those on SMB shares, but that's a problem for another day. Inside here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do mkdir, that's make directory in Linux, and I'm going to put in has demo, and what that's going to do is create this has demo folder here. Now there's nothing inside there, so I'm going to cp HAOS underscore base, and then hit tab 2 times so that I then get autocomplete options. And I'm going to use HAOS OVA QCOW2. So again, using tab completion, we get the full file name that we want. And I'm going to put space, and then I'm going to type in HASS underscore demo, and then slash. And then we see that the HAOS underscore OVA 12.0 QCOW2 image file is now inside that has demo, but because we used CP, it left it inside the HAOS base there. So what I can do now is this copy of the file is going to be my disk image that's going to turn into my virtual machine, and that's going to help me a lot leaving this base here if I, for whatever reason, need to spin up a new virtual machine, if I want a separate instance to just test something, or if something goes horribly wrong during this setup and I need a clean image to start from, I can use that. And it's the same for backups, so I'll also use this concept before I make any major changes to this demo instance of Home Assistant. I can stop the virtual machine, make a copy of this QCOW2 file, and if I break something, I can then just move the copy back to here, provided it's the same name, restart the virtual machine, and it will be as if I never even broke anything. So hopefully that's going to work out well for us. Back over now in our Unraid interface, I need to go and find our virtual machines screen here. Now we can ignore this Windows 10 VM that's there. Because I'm a Mac user, I need a virtual machine to do Windows things. I'm going to click on Add VM, and I'm going to select Linux here, and I'm just going to give it a name, call it Home Assistant and dash demo. And I mean, we can change the icon if we want. I'll turn on auto start here so it does auto start anytime the system starts up. And we can put a description in here. It's optional. I'll leave that alone. Our CPU mode, I'm going to leave this as host pass-through, but you could change it to emulated. I'm going to leave it as pass-through. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select some cores to pass through and deselect CPU 0. So we've got 36 and 76. So those are the main core and then the hyperthreading core, and then 37 and 77, again, a main core and a hyperthreading core there. You'll note there that I have quite a number of cores and hyperthreads. And as I mentioned, I will talk a bit more about the server upgrades that I did in a separate video. In the initial memory dropdown, I'm going to give this a fair amount of memory. I'm going to give this 4 gig, which is 4096 megabytes of RAM. And then the next thing that I need to do is in our primary vdisk location, in this dropdown, I need to change this to manual. So once we've changed that to manual, we can then click on this separate subfolder and the image will be created here. So if I click this dropdown, I need to find my user, and then I need to find domains, and then we've got has_demo, and this is where we select this QCOW2 file. We can leave the primary vdisk bus alone as virt.io. We can leave the Unraid share modes, etc. alone. We don't need to worry about that. We don't need to worry about the graphics card stuff, the sound card stuff. What we do need to do here is make sure that we have a network MAC here. Sometimes it's nice to maybe just refresh this a couple of times. Now, I've had a little bit of weirdness when the network source is set to this virtual bridge 0. I end up changing this to vhost 0 instead. Unclear if I can leave this virt.io-net. I end up changing this to an E1000, and that's purely because I know that E1000 is pretty well supported in Linux. And then the last thing here that I need to change is this USB devices section. For the purposes of this setup, I want to pass through this Silicon Labs Hub Z Smart Home Controller. And this is the Zigbee stick that we have looked at in the past. So we've got the checkbox there selected, and with that checkbox selected, if I have the checkbox also for Start VM After Creation selected there, I'll click Create, and then once that happens, we then get this pop-up, and it is starting up a virtual machine, and it is trying to boot that virtual machine. And we see we've got all these kind of Linux startup things, and this looks very similar to what we would see if we were looking at the screen of a Raspberry Pi, for example, that was booting Home Assistant. This does take a little while. So we have in here that our IPv4 address for our Ethernet is 192.168.1.153. So if I, in our browser, go 192.168.1.153 and :8123, we have preparing Home Assistant, and this may take up to 20 minutes. Because we've given this 2 cores, 2 hyperthreads, and 4 gigs of RAM, I think this should be relatively quick. While we're waiting for this to finish up, we don't actually really need this console open anymore. It does give us a little bit of info as everything happens. So, I mean, we could run core info, for example, and it'll tell us a little bit about what's going on. To be perfectly honest, though, the web UI is where everything is that we need it now. So I'll just close that console. That's not going to stop our virtual machine from running, though. So it is going to continue, and you'll see here, even if I refresh this page, we have that it is still started, and we've got our auto start switch turned on there. So that is all running perfectly fine. Okay, fantastic. So Home Assistant has finished setting itself up. Are you ready to awaken your home, reclaim your privacy, and join a worldwide community of tinkerers? I'm going to rush through this setup because I've done this setup a number of times. There are a couple of changes since the last time I did a raw Home Assistant setup, but that's not the core of this video. We're just going to rush through this to do it as quick as possible. So And we are inside a Home Assistant instance. I want to check out the Zigbee home automation, so I'll click on settings and I'll go to devices and services. We've got our HubZ smart home controller discovered. I'll click configure. It's going to start configuring this. I'm going to erase network settings and create a new network. And we've got our Silicon Labs has been discovered. I'm going to put this into a new room called utility, add, and finish. So now we scroll down, we have our ZHA integration and we've got one device and 3 entities not shown. I'll add devices via this device and it's now scanning for Zigbee devices. I'm going to put this button in my hand into pairing mode, and I might need to go and take a walk down the hall so that I am a lot closer to the Zigbee stick for this pairing to complete. So I'll do that. Okay, great. So it's starting the interview. It is taking a while. Okay, so we've got the devices ready to use. It's only showing me the battery status. I'm pretty sure that's pretty much all we get from this. I'll change the device name. I'll just change this to button and we'll put it into an area called test. Add that, and then we can click on that, and then we'll click on the 3-dot stack and go to device info. And we've got battery is unknown, and we've got our 2 sensors there. So I'll just enable those, and now I'll go grab that button again, and we can press the button, and even back here, we're well away from the Zigbee stick. I'm double tapping the button, single tapping the button, and long pressing the button. And we have all of those events showing up in our logbook here. So we've got a Zigbee stick paired to our virtual machine, and it is talking quite happily to Home Assistant, which is running inside that virtual machine. Before we summarize, I do also want to point out here that in settings, if we had updates to run, we would be able to see those updates here, and that includes the Home Assistant core updates. If I look at our settings tab here and go to about, we can see that we've got the core version, the supervisor version, the OS version, and the front end version are all showing in our about section there. So it's very clear that we have supervisor running. And if we go to our add-on store, so for example, we could add something like a mosquito broker, we could install the ESP home add-on here, for example, or something like terminal and SSH. Matter server is another option. Decons is another one if we were using a Conbi stick to control a Zigbee network with that Conbi stick. Whole bunch of different options that we can install inside this VM, because we're making use of the proper Home Assistant OS with the supervisor add-on there. So we don't then need to have our add-ons as Docker containers sitting outside of Home Assistant. We have everything inside Home Assistant, and it's managed just from inside here. So that's setting up a Home Assistant virtual machine on Unraid with a USB Zigbee dongle passed through as well. We're getting all of the same functionality that we do on our Raspberry Pi, but this VM can have way more RAM if we want it to than a Raspberry Pi. I could give this thing 16 gigs. You can't get a 16 gig Raspberry Pi. I can give it way more disk space as well, so that we're not worrying about booting off an unreliable SD card or having to set up an external SSD for us to boot off or something along those lines. So we can add plenty more space if we need it. And if we really wanted to, we can add so many more CPU cores as well, potentially removing some of the performance bottlenecks that are possible or we might find with a Raspberry Pi, which, while they do perform really, really well, it does have a lower clock speed and fewer cores than what is available to me in my server here. We also then don't need to tie up a dedicated piece of hardware to run Home Assistant. I'm 100% going to be migrating my demo instance of Home Assistant over to a virtual machine on Unraid, which is going to free up one of the Raspberry Pi 4s that I've got set up. Another great thing here is that because we're using what amounts to a live image in that QCOW2 file, as I mentioned, if I need to do something that's experimental and it has a good chance of breaking my setup, before I do anything, I can stop the virtual machine, copy the QCOW2 image somewhere else, and then restart the virtual machine. If something goes wrong and I end up breaking the system, it's then pretty simple for me to revert back to the copy that I took before making those breaking changes by just deleting the live one and copying back the copy that I made before. I definitely would like a much nicer snapshotting function built into the Unraid UI so that I don't have to do all of that manually. That said, I'll probably end up writing a script to periodically run and take those snapshots for me, and that'll end up being a little bit more automated and a little bit easier to handle. Another option, because of how quick and easy this was to set up, is that I could just reasonably create a whole new VM to test out some changes. And if I break something, it's just no issue. I just blow away that VM and try something else. As you saw, it was really easy to pass through the USB dongle that was plugged into the server into the VM and make that work. Now, I did try this with my Conbi stick and I had some challenges, but I didn't try super hard. So once again, your mileage may vary. Now, it's also certainly not unreasonable for me to configure a Home Assistant integration for Unraid in my production instance, for example, and then set up some automations to then start up and shut down my demo instance of Home Assistant so that that demo instance isn't running when it's not needed. That said, I don't think that the power load of running this virtual machine is particularly high. And it would probably be on par with running it on a Raspberry Pi. I don't know if it's going to make a quantifiable difference. In fact, I suspect that the virtual machine might actually draw more energy than a Raspberry Pi, so it's something to be aware of. But the reality is that the server is going to be on 24/7 anyway, and there's also some other protections that I have in place by running it on the server. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. If you're an Unraid user and a Home Assistant user and you like this kind of content, let me know, and I might take a look at doing some more things with Home Assistant and Unraid, especially looking at integrating some Unraid settings into Home Assistant so that we can control our Unraid server from Home Assistant. That's all we have for this video, and I do hope that it helped you in your smart home journey. Be sure to drop a comment below with a home automation idea that you'd like to see me cover in a future video. And don't forget to follow HiveMind Automation on Instagram and Facebook. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button below to give it a like. And if you're not already subscribed, now's a great time to change that. While you're at it, if you hit the bell icon, you'll get a notification when I release new videos each week. Lastly, if you like what I'm doing here and you want to support the channel, there's a Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below. Any contribution you make through Buy Me a Coffee does get put towards making more and hopefully better content for you to enjoy. Don't forget to check out my website, hivemindautomation.com.au. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Stu from HiveMind Automation, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.